All right, hello there. It is, what is this? This is March 26th. March 26th, 2022. Let me check my system here and make sure that everything seems to be functioning okay. Looks like I am live and we have audio, so the system seems to be operating just fine. It's 6 p.m. Colorado time, and I am here at home just available to answer questions that you guys may have sent in to me in advance. Having a peek, I don't see anything in the inbox. I think I've got everything that has come through. So, should you have any questions for me for 2 weeks from now? Seems to be doing okay with 2 weeks. If you have anything that you want to bring up with me that maybe I could help with or give a different point of view or something to that effect, then you just send me an email to my personal email address, aaron@aaronbudjen.net, and I'll see what I can do about adding it to the queue if it's something I think I might be able to be of help with. So I have a few to get into. One thing I'd like to start with, just because, is I know the last time, 2 weeks ago when I was here, I was talking about the fact that nobody knows who has their finger on the big red button, and the idea behind that is that there's a high probability that we're going to be seeing World War III. There just is. It's a high probability. And within our own nuclear arsenal, nobody seems to know, or at least it doesn't seem to be well known, who has the finger on, or who even has the button for our particular nuclear arsenal. And that's I know some of you sent me some emails saying this is very very uncomfortable to be thinking about that, and the fact that you're making jokes about it. And I agree with you. That is very uncomfortable, and in some ways we should be uncomfortable. I would think that this is an issue, but it's important to live, in reality. And as far as I can tell, that's what's real. And if there is a major war, there's just going to be a lot of pain and suffering. And I don't think that it's going to turn out well for really much of anybody. And we don't know what that's going to look like. And that's just a part of life. And I brought it up because it's important to know. It's important to understand. All right. So if anybody has figured out who actually has control over the big red button, you let me know. I'm kind of curious myself. But even in the midst of that, it's important for us to continue to live our lives and do the best we can with every day that we've got, with the decisions that we can make. I mean, if I had the big red button, it would be simple. I would probably just hide it, So, and then it's one way of dealing with that. All right. Somebody asked, why did I decide not to garden this coming summer? See, what's been going on is that the garden plot that I've been working for years is part of an association. It's not where I live, and the distance, because my life has been reconfigured over this past year. It's changed a lot. This coming summer, it's just going to cost way too much in time and in fuel for me to be able to work it. Where I'm living right now, I'm renting this space, and I do have a yard, but it was sprayed pretty heavily by the people who were here before me. It's just not suitable for me to do any work on it here. There might be some spots, some associations that are closer to where I live, but honestly, this summer I'm gonna be spending more time with my kids, and there are some projects that I want to do in my shop. So that's the decision that I made concerning that. I know there's been a popular topic with some folks, and I'm going to miss it, but my life has changed in a way that it just isn't something that I can do. In the event that one day there is a significant need for me to grow food again, then I know how to do it, and I've got plenty of seeds and tools, and there's lots of ways to make that work. But fortunately, I did grow a lot last summer that I expect it to last probably 2 years, most of the stuff that I grew, and then after that I have to dispose of it anyway. It's in deep freezers, but you know, I have to take care of other things. My kids are at an age where they just need more time with me, and like I said, there are some projects that I want to do. So that's the trade-off. You know, I can't do it all, so I make choices. All right, John chapter 5, verse 14. The person asked me this question: was Jesus still teaching the law of Moses by giving the commandment to the healed man? What this was the situation when there was the man who was at the pool of Bethesda, and Jesus healed the man, and then he told the man, don't go and sin anymore, or something worse might happen to you. That's the background of this question. He told the man, he gave the commandment to the healed man not to sin anymore, or something worse may happen to him. Is this why so many Christians today are still living in bondage? Because they do not fully understand that God no longer holds their sins against them anymore. And when they read passages like this, they believe that it applies to them, and what they must continue to do to please God by what they do in the flesh for justification, and not rest fully in what Christ did for them on the cross already. All right, now this is one reason why some believers do live a life of bondage, in a sense. Jesus put it this way. He said, if you will abide in my word, you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Well, another way to look at that particular topic is to put it in the reverse and see if that is true also. And in doing this, you would say, if you believe something that is not true, then you will be in bondage. If you believe the truth, it will set you free. If you believe something that's not true, it will put you in bondage. And I find that tends to be the case a lot, that a lot of the bondage that people are in is because they believe a lot of things that just simply are not true. You know? And you have to be careful not to be the absolute judge of that. You know, it's easy to tell somebody, oh, you're in bondage because you believe something that isn't true, you know. Well, a lot of people will use that as like a manipulation, a dishonest relational tactic where they say, well, you know, I want you to believe my lie, and so I'll tell you that you're in bondage because you don't believe my lie. You know, I've run into this before, and that's worse. It's even worse. But it's a principle that seems to work out really well. Now, you know, I understand that there are a lot of people who do not know that their sins are forgiven, but you have to be a little bit more cautious, I think, about this, because there are not many Christians who really care too much about this. You know, they're in bondage because of other issues that they believe or they don't believe. Only the most sincere, as I have found, only the most really truly committed and truly sincere find themselves in a form of bondage because they think that God still holds their sins against them. There are lots of other Christians who they really don't care that much. You know, that's just not so much a big deal for them. I don't think that's helpful either. But they are in bondage, and they certainly don't believe that their sins are forgiven. They don't believe that God doesn't hold their sins against them anymore. That is true, but it's not as important to them as there would be some other things that they would be concerned about that would hold them in bondage. So try not to necessarily identify what it may be for every person. This can be a part of it. But, you know, every person really is unique. And this is why it's important for us to always be sensitive to the Spirit of God, to the Holy Spirit, who may guide us as we are having conversations with other people. Because the Spirit of the Lord will know the heart of the individual and may be able to speak within and through us. And we may not know what that particular item might be. But the Lord can perhaps guide us when it comes to that and give us discernment, or even speak without us even knowing. All right? So whatever you do as you engage with people, just be sincere, be honest, but don't try to dig at people and say, well, I'm going to figure out what's wrong with you. You don't want to do that. So try to be polite as you are able. Now, what was going on? Now, I spent a lot of time on this section in the scriptures, John chapter 5. And if you look on this channel, you scroll down, you'll find messages that I gave on John chapter 5. That's kind of convenient. And in there, I spent a lot of time on this, on this section. Please, go through it and review it a little bit. I know it's been a while, but in there I explained that it's not necessarily a divine judgment. Jesus did say that where was it? Verse 14. Yeah, verse 14, afterward Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you have been made well. Sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon you." All right. Well, he could have said that in the sense that it was a divine judgment of God. And if God wanted to execute a divine judgment on somebody, I am not going to be the one to say that he can't do that. All right. If it was, in this case, my feelings would be that this is before the new covenant went into effect, and so technically the man's sins could be held against him. And if God wanted to hold his sins against him in this way, I'm not going to protest to God. I'm not going to do that. And in that line of thought, even today, if God decides to execute some divine judgment against someone because of their sin, well, I'm not going to be the one to protest. I will have some questions for him. I will, for God. I'll have some questions for him. But I won't be the one to say that he can't or that he won't, because the Lord has not given me that role in his life, where I can go to him and say, "Excuse me, God, but I think that this is inappropriate." He hasn't given me that role in his life. So I'm not going to say that. However, I will continue until he reveals to me otherwise. I will continue to be true to what I understand, and that is that he will not invoke divine judgment on anyone of this nature because of their sin after the new covenant went into effect. That's what I sincerely believe, and so that's what I will continue to teach and present and share with people, and my life will be a reflection of that. But at the same time, like I said, if God wants to do something different, it's not my role to bring that up to him. It's just not. Although I like I said, I might have some questions for him to help me understand what he's doing or what he's thinking. There's another possibility here, which I think is maybe more likely, and that is that it was a natural consequence of a sin that the man committed. He could have committed a sin, and there are many, many sins that could have a consequence or a side effect, through a series of events that may follow after the sin is committed that could result in him not being able to walk. All right, lots of examples of situations where that could occur, and so it wouldn't necessarily require divine intervention for that to happen. And that's what I was presenting in the messages that I did on John chapter 5. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Let's see. Okay, this comes from Loda in Sweden, and this is about what's happening over there in Europe and in Asia, where it appears that we're going to see World War III start over there. At least just get started, and then who knows how it's going to spread. But there is the appearance that that's going to be the case. So Loda asks, can we, through prayer, change outcomes? Why this question? This is what is communicating to Christians here in Sweden and Europe due to the war in Ukraine and threats of a coming war in surrounding nations. So the question is through prayer, can we change outcomes through prayer? The belief is that if we pray, the war can stop. Pray, bend our knees and cry. In the Old Covenant, this is absolutely an option, but it is not that clear in the New. My thought, I am battling the thought of standing in persecution, not changing other people's minds with prayer. That's right. If you don't believe this, like all the other Christians in Europe do, then they're going to persecute you. That's right. Especially because you're a Christian and you're not praying, and we all have to do it together. Or I remember this. I remember when the National Day of Prayer was promoted, I think for the first time, years and years ago, and I remember it being promoted like that, saying if we can just get everybody to pray, and I thought this, and I just said this. I said, the day is going to come when somebody's going to ask, who's not praying? Because it just wasn't going to work out that way, in my opinion. And sure enough, on the same radio program, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years later, sure enough, somebody was on the radio, I remember this, and they said it's now time to start asking who's not praying. And so you're right, if you don't join in with this, they're going to say it's all your fault that World War III has happened. That's what they're going to do. Yes. All right. And you can think that that's kind of funny. There is some humor there, but at the same time, it's really unfortunate that this is how people will relate to each other. Okay. Yeah. So I'll not read the rest in this case. All right, now in the Old Covenant, God was responsive to the people of Israel. He was responsive. And that had to do with the relationship that was defined between himself and the people. All right? Now, that was the relationship that was between himself and the Israelites. And in the New Covenant, there is a different kind of relationship that's defined through the New Covenant. And that does not include what was going on in the Old. So it could be, that many people are turning to that relationship and that part of the world at that time period, and they're saying, God, you have to have this kind of relationship with us now. And I don't think he's going to go for that. All right? I just don't. I don't think that God is going to comply. I don't think he's going to agree to be in that kind of a relationship. Now, just because I don't think so doesn't mean that he won't. Because like I said earlier, I'm not the one who decides what God will or will not do. I don't do that. It's just my opinion. I don't think that he's going to respond on that basis. All right. What a lot of people believe, though, when it comes to this, is they believe that it is their prayer that will change things. And I have trouble with that. All right, I do. I have a lot of trouble with that. It's my belief that only God as a person will change things of this caliber, of this nature. If he's going to intervene, it'll be because he intervenes, not because people prayed. And we can certainly bring things to his attention, and we can make our appeal. But if there is some divine intervention, it will be because he decided to do it, not because we prayed. I personally don't see the connection between the two. The reason why I say this is because the idea of prayer, all right, the idea of prayer in many cases, especially in Christianity, the idea of prayer is similar to witchcraft. All right? It's similar to witchcraft. This is one of the most popular conversations that I've had with witches. Okay? With ladies and guys who claim that they are of Wicca or that they're of witchcraft or whatever. it's okay to have conversations with people like this. And I'll tell you that this is a common conversation, is that they don't see that they are any different from Christians in terms of their practices when it comes to their form and their style of prayer. And in a lot of ways, they're right. Okay? In a lot of ways, they're right with a lot of the ways that many Christians believe and how they practice their faith. It really is just like witchcraft. Okay? I certainly don't want to encourage anybody to participate in that kind of stuff and do that. But when I hear something like this, that is the first thing that will come to mind. All right? It doesn't mean that this was their intention, but it's the first thing that will come to mind when they say, can we, through prayer, change outcomes? All right? Where is God in that? He's not there. It's because I, through prayer, can change outcomes. That's witchcraft. All right? I don't think that was necessarily what you were intending to describe, Loda. It's just that there are enough Christians in the world who actually think that way. I gotta say it. I have to say it, that God is not a part of this. All right. Now, like I said, maybe He will intervene. I honestly see no reason why He would, in this case at all. I don't see that. I don't mind asking Him to. I wouldn't mind that at all. But I think these folks are going to experience a great sense of disappointment really soon. And when they do, they're going to look for somebody to blame, and you are probably going to be it because you didn't pray like they said you needed to pray. If they were to ask me to pray in this way, I probably wouldn't do it either. And they can blame me and say World War III is all Aaron's fault. And then I'll go find some new friends. That's what I'll do. I'll just go find some new friends. Oh, gosh. Okay, you asked about Numbers 28. I'm going to pass on this one. I'm going to think about this one a little bit more. I'm not sure that I can add much to this. I'm going to think about it, okay? All right, moving on to the next one. This is from Audra in Texas. Hi. I was wondering what your take is regarding the role of elders, deacons, ministers, pastors in the setup of church leadership. If you have a podcast about it that I missed, just point me to it. No, I have not taught on this. I have not presented much on this. I did teach the letter that Paul wrote to Timothy, where he spoke about this at By Grace Fellowship in Denver years ago. I did that, and it was nice, But I don't think I'm going to do any teaching on this particular subject. The reason why I don't think I will be doing this is because it really depends on the congregation of people. It just does. It depends on the relationships that exist among the people. What I have noticed over the years in watching a lot of different fellowships of people, congregations of people, and churches function, what I have noticed is that regardless of who gets assigned a certain position, such as, okay, you are a deacon and you are an elder, regardless of who kind of gets assigned this position whenever that assignment happens, they don't necessarily fulfill that role. I have seen that, what I have seen is that in most congregations, these people kind of surface. They just show up, in the sense that that's who God prepared them to be. And even if they're not officially recognized as being in that kind of a position, the people look to them in that way anyway. And whenever there are conflicts or difficulties or struggles that people have, then they will tend to seek out those people who are in the congregation who they think would be the most helpful. And so I wouldn't know. I don't know what the best way would be to approach teaching on this topic about the role of elders, deacons, ministers, and pastors in setting up a church. Because even though you may assign people, which in many cases you have to do, you may assign people to fulfill these roles. The people in the congregation who God has prepared to fulfill these roles could very well be different than who was assigned the position. And they will, by default, kind of fulfill those roles anyway. All right? So I know that kind of sounds unofficial, because it is, because I have a preference for leaving that in the hands of the Holy Spirit to fulfill these kinds of tasks. And I've seen this happen enough that honestly I feel relatively comfortable about it. So I would say, all right, if you're setting up a church, try not to make assignments like this and let the church function for a while and just keep an eye out for who seems to be fulfilling these roles in the congregation over an extended period of time, and then give them some recognition. Say, you are a deacon, you are an elder, as a form of recognition of how they are fulfilling their role in the congregation. That's how I personally would approach it with a church. Now, if you're setting up a corporation, that's different. Corporation is different, and you just have to define what are the responsibilities and see, who's going to be able to fulfill that list of responsibilities. They will assume those responsibilities. If they fail to do those things, you just find somebody else. That's how it goes. So if you want to make an absolute definition without just kind of waiting to see how the Holy Spirit may work through that, if you want to have an absolute definition, just document well what are the specific tasks that the person is expected to perform. Okay, Kevin in Colorado, you sent me something. You mentioned the Amplified Bible. I just wanted to say some things about the Amplified Bible. This comes up now and then. I have looked at the Amplified Bible well enough myself to feel that I simply would never use it. Okay, all right. If you want to use it, good for you. I don't want to say that's a bad thing, but when I studied the Amplified Bible, this is my impression. All right, my impression is that somebody just grabbed a hold of a thesaurus, okay, and they just copied the thesaurus into the text. It just threw a whole bunch of words at every word. I don't see any increase in knowledge or understanding there at all. I just don't. To me, they just bloated the text, right? And I think that's the correct word, bloated. Bloated with a thesaurus, right? That's my opinion. So that's why I just don't even touch it, because I don't see that there's any value in looking at that at all. Another thing that some people like to get into is something called an interlinear. All right, and an interlinear is also used inappropriately by a lot of people. The interlinear is when you have we have the Greek or the Hebrew in between the text, and there are some English words that are above or below the Hebrew or the Greek word that people look at and they say, oh, that must be closer. Those words they put there, those words must be closer to what that word actually means, instead of the translation that was derived from that. And so if we study the words that are part of the interlinear, then we'll get a more accurate view of what that word actually meant. And that is not true. Okay, that is not true. I can say this specifically from the Hebrew. I'm not well versed in Greek, but when it comes to Hebrew, I can tell you I've seen all the interlinears. Okay, and none of them were written for that purpose at all. All right, they have some English words with the Hebrew in order to make it easier for you to use other books in order to do a lookup, okay, to do a lookup for further research. It's just some words that are put there to make it a little bit easier for you to know where to go look in order to get a better understanding. But those words are not a higher quality translation of that at all. It just isn't. Most of these things are computer generated, right? Or they're just copied over from one word to the next. It's not a higher quality of translation, all right? So that I wanted to mention that with interlinears. Also with the Amplified, I don't see it, okay? I just don't. All right, next one, Jeff in Colorado. Can you help me understand this passage? Matthew chapter 18, verses 18 through 20. I tell you the truth, whatever you bind on earth will have been bound in heaven, and whatever you release on earth will have been released in heaven. Again, I tell you the truth, if two of you on earth agree about whatever you ask, my Father in heaven will do it for you. For where 2 or 3 are assembled in my name, I am there among them. All right, now Jeff mentions what's confusing me is that the broader context is about forgiveness, and Peter understands this, which is why the next verse, Peter asks Jesus, how many times must I forgive my brother? So the question has been driving me nuts for a few weeks. The most I can guess is whatever you bind is if you choose to join in with one another as friends, brothers, and whatever you lose is if you forgive someone, but now I'm just guessing and I'm not at all confident. And that's I wanted to read all the way through there to say that, yes, that's right. That's what we end up with. We end up with guessing and a lack of confidence, okay? This is actually absolutely correct. Because I don't think we have enough written down here by Matthew in order to really get a good grasp on what he was really intending to say. Now, Matthew's gospel was written in Hebrew, and this is on my list of things to do if I ever can get to it. Matthew's gospel was written in Hebrew, and I actually have several copies of Matthew's gospel in Hebrew. It's using medieval script and stuff, but I got it from the British Museum, and I got 2 copies, one from the British Museum and one from the museum in Leningrad. I have these copies. They're in a binder. They're on my list of things to do. And I got another one too. I can't remember where that's from. but yeah, so I'm pretty sure I have 3 different manuscripts of Matthew's gospel in Hebrew. The problem was that Matthew's Hebrew was definitely not so good. All right, it just wasn't. If you remember the history of Matthew, he was a tax collector. Well, as a tax collector, he's not going to be welcome in the synagogue. And the synagogue was the only place where people were speaking Hebrew. So he didn't have much of an opportunity to gain really any exposure to the Hebrew language. He knew Aramaic, which was kind of close, but he decided to write this gospel, the Gospel of Matthew, in Hebrew. So when he wrote it, it was about 3 years, approximately, maybe a little bit longer. I would guess about 3 years after he started really studying Hebrew. And the reason why I feel comfortable in saying that is because when I read through the Gospel of Matthew in Hebrew, it looks like someone who's got about 3 years worth of experience with Hebrew. All right, it just does, and 3 years is pretty good, But I can tell that there are some hang-ups, okay. So what he does in some spots, in some cases, he uses Latin. All right, in the Gospel of Matthew, there's Latin. All right, because he didn't know the Hebrew word for some words, and so he he took the Latin word and then he transliterated it into Hebrew, which means he just kind of pronounced it using Hebrew letters. And he stuck that in. So you got the Gospel of Matthew that's been written by someone who's probably got about 3 years experience of an introduction to Hebrew conversation and filled in some words with Latin that he didn't quite know. And then, what happened was that people got this gospel and they translated it into Greek. All right, so they translate this thing into Greek, and the historical record, I think it was Papias who said this, can't quite remember exactly who, but they said that the people translated the Gospel of Matthew into Greek as best they could. And let me tell you, that says a lot, okay? It does, as best they could, because when you've got a letter written like that, it's tough. It's tough to get through, okay? Like I said, there's been some spots that I was able to get through. I mentioned some of this in the recordings I did on divorce and remarriage, I think. I'm pretty sure I put some of this in the Sermon on the Mount. It's been a long time, though, since that's over 10 years since I recorded those. So there, I've mentioned this in a few cases. And so when I go through this particular passage, that's what I would like to do. I would like to spend time going through this. Personally, just on this, I would like to have like 2 days. That's what I would like. I'd like to have 2 days. Folks, I can barely get 20 minutes. With all that I'm trying to do, I can barely get 20 minutes to do something these days. And so, I don't know when I might be able to approach this, but I can tell you, what somebody can go do. For me to be able to do this, I just don't know. I may be dead before I'm able to go through this one, but that's something that I have a genuine desire to find out about. So, having said all of that, the way that I read through this is similar to what Jeff said. Okay, I do see that the greater context has to do with forgiveness. Okay, and my reading from this, just the sense that I get, is that he's effectively stating that if you will tell others about the forgiveness that has been given to them, they will be free. And if you don't, well, it will be as if they weren't forgiven for them, because nobody even told them that they were forgiven. That's my impression. All right, but like I said, for me to really answer this question, I just explained how I personally would feel comfortable in answering this particular question. But until then, this remains for me an open issue, and I just read it from this point of view, and I feel comfortable with it, understanding that there's more that I would like to do. Okay, when he talks about if 2 of you on earth agree about whatever you ask, my Father in heaven will do it for you. There were many other places when Jesus said this kind of a thing. And when he did, he put conditions on it. In other words, he didn't just leave it hanging like this. He said, but before you do, go and make sure that your brother doesn't have anything against you. That kind of thing. There were always some conditions that seemed to be applied to this before you ask him to do anything, ask him to do anything and he'll do it. There were some conditions to be met, which would be consistent with the old covenant that was in effect during the time when Jesus said this. Okay, so those are my thoughts on this passage, and I hope that gives you some direction to look in. Like I said, I have a direction that I would like to go in to look in more, but I don't know that I will live long enough to do it. I'm getting old, so I don't know. All right, next one from Julia. My question is for any insight to what happens to America if Russia sells oil in rubles and the oil dollar is replaced. Okay, and then got another question on the end of this. Okay, I got to give you some history for this one. All right, I got some visual aids over here on the side. I'll give you some history here. I used to do consulting for pension funds, and even the Federal Reserve called me in once. For those of you who don't know, I do have experience in international banking in Austria and Liechtenstein. And I learned a lot before I was hired on by them, and then eventually was trained as a negotiator and traveled around the world helping with a lot of different things. And so I have extensive experience on this particular topic. I got out because I saw that there was some fraud that was approaching, or I suspected it, with the group that I was asked to be a part of, and so I disappeared. I bailed out. They wanted me to take a senior position. I said, I asked them, well, what's it going to cost me? They said, well, you have to dedicate your life to this. I said, with the fraud I'm suspecting, and I told them, I said, look, I'm a Christian, and I have to be available for my God in the event that He would call me to do something else. I cannot make that kind of a commitment. And they told me, well, you know too much. You're becoming a security risk. I was, and so they had to put me under protection and that kind of thing. And so I had to take the position, or I was just completely out. So I chose to just go completely out. I was out, and had nothing. And just completely started over. I took a break just as part of my starting over process. I got 50 acres of land in the middle of the forest, and I went out there for about 8 or 9 months and just took a break, before I came back into town and started my life over. And that was when I went back to school and got a degree in computer science and PhD, and then I did that for a while, and then sure enough, the Lord called upon me, and He says, you're doing pretty well, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I'm doing great. I had a pretty good path before, but I got out, and now, I'm doing great. I'm teaching at the university. I got students who are working on their PhDs, and I'm helping them out too. And I'm working for the Office of Naval Research and the Defense Advanced Research Projects Administration, and I'm designing missile systems, and all kind. I was a rocket scientist, so all this kind of stuff. And He said, would you be willing to let it all go in order to do something for me? And I said, no. I did. I said, no. And then He didn't say anything. And that dead silence, boy, that really got to me. And I started to cry, And anyway, it wasn't very long after that I was given an invitation to teach at By Grace Fellowship up in Denver. And then it was not long after that before there was a radio spot that was opened up in Denver for 30 minutes, and well, everything just got started from there. So I eventually let go of my work in computer science and everything. But at any rate, I still can be helpful with some of these things. Let me tell you what happened, okay? I got this visual aid here. This, which you probably can't see very well in the video, this is $1. It's a little bit different from what you see today. This was printed in 1957, all right? And in 1957, it was different. They called it a silver certificate. That's what this was, all right? In fact, at the bottom, it says $1 in silver, payable to the bearer on demand, all right? So if you went into any bank, all right, any financial institution with this, you could demand, because you're the bearer, you could demand 1 ounce of silver, and they would give you one of these, all right? They give you, well, not necessarily exactly like this. This is a little bit of an older one, but they give you one of these, all right? And this is the only one I have. I am not a wealthy person, all right? I made a decision to go into the ministry, and, well, there's no money in it, barely enough to keep going. But they would give you one of these, all right? So what this was a receipt for one of these, okay? That's what this was. Now, I'll pause for just a minute and let you think about that. There are other kinds of receipts. I got a little note here. I made this up. This says, because you can't read it, right? It says, coat check receipt. And I put a number on here, too. I said 40027. Like if you went to a really nice restaurant. I haven't been in one of these in a long time. But you go to a really nice restaurant where they check your coat in, right? I even have a coat here. There's a coat, right? And you hand them you hand them the coat, and they give you this receipt, all right? It's a coat check ticket receipt kind of thing, so that when you're leaving the restaurant, you hand this to the person. They will go get your coat for you, and then you get your coat back, all right? That's the same thing as these, okay? This was a receipt, a check receipt for one of these, all right? Now, of course, it's easier to handle this than it is this because it's lighter, it's foldable. All right, so it's a little bit more convenient to just pass around the buck, all right, pass around the receipt, but it's still it's a claim check on this, all right? Just like this is a claim check on the coat, all right? Well, what would happen if the restaurant told you, oh, we decided that we're going to keep your coat? You can go ahead and just keep the receipt, all right? So now you're going to go back to the car with no coat on. And, it was probably cold out, which is why you had the coat to begin with, maybe, right? And now you got this, all right? This is what you got. You don't have a coat anymore. They decided to keep the coat. That's okay. You can pass this around, right? Other people might be willing to accept this and say, well, sure, I'll take that. I can go to the restaurant and get the coat. Well, maybe, maybe they'll give you the coat. Maybe, that was one of the deals that I would do quite often in the international banking world, is that people's assets would be frozen. And so I would find people who had influence, all right? And I would go to them and I say, I'll tell you what, my client here will give you 15% of what's in this account if you will go and get all of the money for this person. Their account was frozen, like it's happening right now with the sanctions. Private accounts, there's a lot of business available for that right now, which I wouldn't touch anymore. But and so the person of influence would then go and say, excuse me, but some of my money is in that account, and so I need it all. And then they would give it to all of them, and then they would then return 85% of the money to the other person. And that's the kind of those are the kind of deals that are going on right now. Trust me, absolutely. With all the private accounts being seized and yachts being seized, personal assets. That's what that's how those deals get played out. All right. Anyway, I'm getting off on another little trail. So we got this receipt. Maybe you have the influence to go get the coat, right? Well, that's exactly what happened. Okay. What happened was that the banking system decided to keep these, and you can keep this. It was a robbery. All right. It was a huge robbery. This is in the 60s. Long time ago. Where did all these go? Who has these? It's like, who has the red button? Okay, it was a robbery. That's what it was. Okay, it was a huge robbery. And so now you get these, okay? And this is a new one. This one was made in 2017. I got it from the bank recently. It's a brand new note. I even told them, I said, it looks like they really are reaching deep into the back room in order to get some of these nowadays. And it says Federal Reserve note instead of saying silver certificate. It says $1, but it doesn't say 1 ounce of silver bearable upon demand. It just says it's a note. It's a debt instrument. It's a receipt. It's a claim ticket. On what? Well, with this one, it says you can get 1 ounce of silver. And on this one, if you check your wallet, you'll see you got a lot of these. It tells you exactly what you can get for this. You just have to read the fine print, and it says nothing. You get nothing. All right? It's a note of which they owe you nothing. All right? Now, you may wonder, well, how did they get away with this? How did they just get away with this? What they, All right, well, the way they got away with this was there was a deal that was made with OPEC, all right, with the Middle Eastern countries. There was a deal that was made that they would accept these for oil. All right, so you can't get this anymore, but you can get oil. All right, so you can't get you can't get silver, you can't get gold, but you can get oil. And well, all right. So people went for it. The whole world went for it, which is okay. All right, it's okay. It's not preferred, but it worked until they kept making a whole bunch of these more than there was oil. And it's a whole disaster that happened, and that's what's going on. All right. So your question is, what happens to America if Russia sells oil in rubles? Right now, the deal that we made with Saudi Arabia and the other countries just recently, just within the last couple of months, the Russians made the same deal with them, and the way that works is that our country no longer has this official relationship of oil for the I owe you nothing claim ticket, no coat, all right, no silver, no nothing, all right. Here's one from Zimbabwe, $100 trillion. It still doesn't matter, you put a whole bunch of zeros on it and it's still nothing, all right. All right, so now the Russians have got the deal where and that's a transition of now it's going to be rubles for oil. All right, well that's not going to work very well either because the entire system as a whole is imploding. I mean, it is coming apart, and that's what's really happening in the world. And why there was this supposed health event, which you probably have noticed is not really being talked about so much anymore. Why? I mean, what did it just sort of evaporate? Okay. Oh gosh, that was a smoke screen. It was just something to get people busy, or it's a dysfunctional solution. Let me say it that way, to a deeper problem. And the deeper problem is that the entire system that's been built from the robbery back in the 60s, okay, and this exchange for oil, the entire system, well, it wouldn't go on forever, and well, we've reached that point of the end of that supposed forever. We're at the end of that, and the whole system is imploding. Now, for the Russians to try to make this deal of rubles for oil, it isn't going to work. Okay, it just isn't going to work. Now, it could be a temporary transition, absolutely, but it's not going to go. Okay, there's going to be some temporary transitions of things like this. Okay, well, we'll take rubles for oil, we'll take dollars for oil, maybe still. All right, there's a lot of upheaval going on right now, and it's going to take years for it to work out. I'll tell you what you need to look for. Okay, there's lots of things to wait for until that happens. What you need to look for is when the Chinese release the gold trade note or the gold trade bond, which I think they're already making available. When the Chinese issue one of these, again, for this, that's when it's over. Okay, and that's when the whole world is different. As soon as the Chinese do this, and I personally feel that they're going to be the ones to execute this, as soon as that happens, everyone else is toast. Okay, and these receipts, all right, whatever these things are, these IOU nothings, that's what they're going to be. They're going to be a bunch of IOU nothings, and they're not going to. There's nothing to trade, all right. We don't have anything to offer. You're not going to be able to take these and say, "Excuse me, but I'd like to have something made in China." All right. And they're going to say no, because if we take this, what do we do with it? What can we get for this? Is there anything made in America? No. All right, and so that's the system that's unwinding, and from what I can tell, it appears to be a somewhat controlled demolition. But unfortunately, there's all these other additional political people and factors that are going to lead to war. All right. And that's where we're at. In addition to all of this, which is going to make this controlled demolition just a little bit messier. And it's going to be a while before that works out. Okay. And of course, I have to say something about the cryptocurrencies. So I got another little note here with a number on it just to show you just how absurd some of these things can be. And here I got a whole bunch of zeros and ones. I wrote in binary, and I'm not going to tell you what this number actually is in decimal, but I can suggest that it might have some unique mathematical properties. What is this a receipt for? All right, well, what people are thinking is they're thinking, well, I'll take this and I'll get a receipt. I'll convert. Somebody will give me one of these for this, and then somebody will give me more. That's what's going on right now. Yeah, I want this number, and I'll give somebody this so I can get this number because somebody later on will give me more of these for this number. More of these, I owe you nothing. And, well, that might work right now. But I'll tell you, the day is going to come when one day, I got this other little item, you're going to want something like this. Okay? Hunt's fire roasted diced tomatoes. And I'll tell you, the chances of you giving somebody a number with certain mathematical properties and them wanting to give you this, that's pretty close to no chance. At least I certainly won't. Trust me, I won't. So that's how things are going. You know why the governments love this crypto stuff? I'll tell you what it is. See, this is what happens. You have this, and you get somebody to give you this for this, right? Well, when that happens, now they have this, and the government takes about 20% out of this. And then, when you want to convert this back to this, well, the government takes another 20% out of that too. And trust me, if they haven't come for their cut off of your transactions of these numbers with unique mathematical properties yet, don't worry, they are coming for you. Because this is the most trackable transaction that I think that can possibly exist. And they are going to hire a whole bunch of hungry people who will love to hunt you down because they'll get a percentage off of the percentage that they take from you to include the fines for your late payment. That's what's coming. That is what's coming. I'm not a prophet, all right? I speak that out of conviction. I genuinely believe that that's what's coming. All right. Do I see a food shortage coming? There's always issues related to food. The food has a lot to do with weather and distribution and productivity. That's been down quite a bit, and so yeah, there will be a shortage. What you may find though is that you may have less choice. That will probably be how it's described as shortage. But I don't think in our part of the world that we will see mass starvation, unless the government or governing authorities go in and seize people's food and they take control over the means of production. So that's my personal opinion. I think that there will be less choice and less manufacturing, but I don't see that there will be necessarily starvation taking place. For any concerns that you may have about the value of the currencies or the ability to get food, the solution is easy, all right? You just need to increase your skills in being able to produce things or fix things, all right? That's all you need to do, regardless of just how traumatic or how awful things may turn out. If you have the ability to produce things that are needed by people, right? I'm not talking about some luxury thing like, oh, I can make a fancy lampshade. Okay, well, those are nice, but that's not the kind of category. That's not the kind of item I'm referring to. If you can produce something that people genuinely need, or if you have the skills to be able to repair something that is broken, then you should be able to trade those things for whatever you need, in order to make it through. And that's how I would encourage people to get through this. Now, having said all of that, I wanted to end with this thought, and that is that, yes, our world has been going through a lot of change, and it's going to go through a lot of change. Okay, that's pretty obvious in my opinion. Things are never going to go back to the way they were 3 years ago or 4 years ago. Those days are gone, all right? We're never going to see life like that again. Life is different, and it's going to become more awkward. But please try to remember this, okay? This is the best opportunity that we will have ever in order to reach out to people with the gospel and to help people to know the Lord. This is it. Today is the best day. Tomorrow will not be as good as today, but it's still going to be good. And the day after that will not really be as good as yesterday, as tomorrow, but it's still going to be good, all right? So do not give up. Do not let up. And if we find ourselves going into a new dark age of some kind, like when Rome fell apart, if that's what we do, folks, that's what we do. But between now and then, do not give up and do not let fear overtake you, and not be a part of reaching out to people, with the gospel, and that people may know the Lord. And that's what I do. Okay? That's what I do. That's my life. All right? My life is that. And when the dark ages may arrive, and I can do this no more, well, then I will produce things or fix things. That's what I will do. But between now and then, I speak from conviction. We should all make sure not to let up on what we are doing in order to help the propagation of the gospel. Because when we're done, you may notice that there aren't any other people out of any other countries that are doing this. Consider China, right? They got over 1 billion people over there. Between China and India, that's 3 billion people. And do we see big Christian ministries from those places? No. All right? Not like the work that I'm doing and some others are doing. So, it's not over yet. And we keep working until we can work no more. All right? Okay, thank you for being a part of this. That's an hour, and I will return in the morning to teach on the Gospel of John, and then I'll do another Q&A 2 weeks from now. Thanks.